days in Chicago. Now WNYC is always with me in the car, on the train, and on my daily runs as a political science professor and an informed citizen. I could not do without you. We can't do without you, listeners. 888-376-9692 or donate online at wnyc.org.
WNYC supporters include the Met, now on view, Siena, The Rise of Painting, explores the dawn of the Italian Renaissance. Museum admission is pay what you wish for New Yorkers. Learn more at metmuseum.org.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance. Customers can simplify their insurance needs and protect what's important by bundling home and auto. Learn more about bundling at progressive.com.
We'll talk about earnings, we'll talk about access to credit, and we'll talk about cute storybook cottages. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Drexel University, whose model of experiential education infuses academics with real experience, yielding impactful results. More at drexel.edu. And by C3 Generative AI, verified traceable answers, secure, hallucination-free, LLM-agnostic, IP liability-free C3.ai. This is Enterprise AI. And by Clear Channel Outdoor, offering a nationwide network of billboards and data solutions that help businesses build brand awareness and influence consumer behavior. Billboardsforbusiness.com.
In New York, I'm Kristen Schwab in for Kai Ryssdal. It's Monday, October 21st. Thanks for joining. This week's corporate earnings calendar is very full. We'll hear from 3M, Coca-Cola, Tesla, IBM, and some 1,600 other companies on how they did in the most recent quarter. There's always a consumer focus in these reports. Analysts will be listening for whether people are still spending. But another theme that's likely to come up is the value of the U.S. dollar and how that impacts companies' profits. For some foreshadowing, last week, Procter & Gamble said it's more optimistic about foreign exchange than it was earlier in the year. And as Marketplace's Justin Ho reports, the dollar's value could help out a lot of companies in the near future.
Companies care about the dollar's value because when it rises, it affects their sales overseas.
Ultimately, a strong dollar makes that weak in terms of revenue.
That's Dan Ives, managing director with Wedbush Securities. He says those companies have to bring that revenue back home. And if the dollar is strong, those foreign sales just don't go as far back in the U.S.
That's something that ultimately becomes a headwind for companies with a stronger dollar.
The dollar's value shot up back when the Federal Reserve started raising interest in 2022. Back then, the U.S. economy was hot, and foreign investors were piling into government bonds, which you need dollars to buy. But Nick Benenbrook, international economist with Wells Fargo, says now
we're seeing somewhat slower job growth, somewhat slower economic growth, and the U.S. interest rates have started to come down. So with all of that, we have started to see a gradual decline in the U.S. dollar at this point.
That doesn't necessarily mean that the dollar's value will plummet. Christopher Vecchio, head of futures and FX with the research company Tasty Live, says, remember, the Federal Reserve isn't the only central bank cutting rates. There's the European Central Bank,
the Bank of England, Bank of Canada, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand, all moving in lockstep with the Federal Reserve that has begun its rate cut cycle. That probably means you're not going to see one currency, the dollar, otherwise gain too much ground versus its peers.
Instead, Vecchio says the dollar's value will likely stabilize in the coming year, which can give companies a better sense of what to expect.
Having the confidence in where exchange rates are going allows a company to project its earnings a little bit more confidently into the near-term future.
And at a time when the economy can feel uncertain, having that confidence can be pretty helpful. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
Wall Street today couldn't agree on what the earnings week will look like. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. There's a lot of fodder for company stories during a week when so many companies are reporting earnings. But it was easy to pick this one out of the mix, Boeing. It reports on Wednesday, and there is a lot going on for the company right now. Some of its workers have been on strike for 5 weeks. And just this weekend, Boeing reached a tentative deal with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. The proposed contract includes a 35% pay raise over the next 4 years, a one-time $7,000 ratification bonus, and higher retirement contributions. It does not bring back pensions, which workers wanted. The vote is set for Wednesday, earnings day, and all of this is against the backdrop of safety problems at Boeing. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has more.
It has been a rough year for Boeing. The first week of January, you might remember, a door plug blew out of an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX jet mid-flight. Not exactly an auspicious start to a new year. Meghna Maharishi, airline reporter at Skift, says things haven't really improved since.
Boeing has had a ton of other issues with all of its aircraft programs.
With production and quality control, delivery delays, federal scrutiny.
So many issues that have been causing it to lose money. And I think the strike has just magnified all the other issues at Boeing.
Going into the strike, Mike Dunlop, an aviation analyst, says Boeing was already in a bad financial spot. It hasn't turned a profit since 2018.
They've just got a real leaky sieve. The company's in very, very difficult financial state right now.
And the strike has now cost it at least $1 billion, according to one estimate, maybe more. Richard Abulafia at Aerodynamic Advisory says it's not just costing Boeing.
It's been devastating, particularly to the suppliers that have been, beaten up badly over recent years.
Between Boeing halting production of the MAX jet and COVID-related shutdowns and supply chain issues.
And just when the great cash machine that is 737 production and other production got going, all of a sudden this happens and further derails things. So it's been very damaging.
If workers in the Machinists Union vote to ratify the new contract and the strike ends after these 5 or so weeks, Abulafia says Boeing should have a chance to recover. But if not,
they just continue to lose money, and that just gets more and more damaging.
Especially for a company that is already in a precarious financial position. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
Let's do the numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 344 points, 0.8%, to finish at 42,931. The Nasdaq gained 50 points, 0.3%, to close at 18,540. And the S&P 500 shed 10 points, 0.2%, to end at 5853. Gold hit a record high of $2,723 per ounce earlier today. In some gold-related stocks, Harmony Gold Mining Company shined up 2.2%. Newmont Corporation lost 0.1%. Barrick Gold Corporation lost 0.3%. Disney announced it will hire a new CEO in early 2026 following the end of current CEO Bob Iger's contract. Walt Disney Company fell 0.7%. Bonds fell. The yield on the 10-year T-note rose to 4.19%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Bitwarden Password Manager, with a reminder that this time of year brings out the Halloween tricksters. Bitwarden can help from falling for cyber tricks and phishing scams by protecting personal information on any device anywhere. Learn more at bitwarden.com. And by JLL, committed to finding smarter ways to tackle business goals with commercial real estate solutions, talent retention, hitting sustainability goals, or simply helping find the place for your business to grow. JLL.com. JLL, see a brighter way. And by Amazon Business, aiming to help save time by offering smart business buying solutions, so there's more time to focus on growing the business and less time doing the admin. More at AmazonBusiness.com.
This election will have a profound impact on our shared future. WNYC is here to report the facts we need to make informed choices, and we've cut this drive in half so we can get back to the election coverage you rely on. But we still need to raise the full amount of a normal drive. We are relying on you to make this All the Money in Half the Time fundraiser a success. We can't do that without your support. Donate now. Here's how.
Here's how. Call 888-376-9692. You can also go online to WNYC.org and click on donate. This is our All the Money, Half the Time pledge drive here at WNYC. It's simple. Really, at the end of the day, we normally have pledge drives that go on for, 9-10 days-ish. This one, half the time. But we need to raise all the money that we normally would in all of that time to be able to keep programming that you're here for on the air. And it's because we know that you're here to hear the critical election coverage that you get from both WNYC and NPR. We know that you're here to get the coverage you get of any number of conflicts or things happening around the world. We know that you're here for stories from the WNYC newsroom about what's going on coming out of City Hall. You're here for these super important stories, and we don't want to keep you from that any longer than we have to. So we cut the pledge drive in half, and we took a chance and said we're going to raise all the money we normally would, hoping and knowing that you're going to step up and do your part. So do it now by calling 888-376-9692. You can also go online to WNYC.org.
It's a big leap of faith, cutting the pledge drive in half. I'm sure that it was not a decision that the development department took lightly. It's a little bit of a nail biter for us, but we're basically optimistic people, and you have to be optimistic to do this, because I think in some ways it's easier to be pessimistic, like, it can't happen. When you're optimistic, you kind of have to work for the better future you want to see. So that's what we are doing right now. We are coming to you and we are saying, hey, we think what we do has value, and we think you believe it too, because you're here listening, and you have over the years built up a relationship with WNYC and NPR to the point where you're like, oh, Brian Lehrer, that's a name I know. Kai Ryssdal, old friend. Mary Louise Kelly. These are all people you have come to know over the years and who you trust to provide you with fact-based journalism. We can't do it without you. Listener support is the largest share of our fundraising. 888-376-9692 or give online at WNYC.org.
Introducing the WNYC Centennial Stanley Cup. No, not the hockey one. We mean the 30-ounce insulated travel tumbler. Free, has double wall vacuum insulation, and comes with a reusable straw and comfort grip handle. We think it's the perfect way for us to say thank you when you contribute. This thing is heavier than I thought. It's legit. It's gorgeous. Ooh, the red WNYC logo against frosted white. I mean, it just feels good in my hands. I'll bring back the Stanley in a minute. Oh, yeah. Support WNYC with a donation now to get your Stanley Cup. Not this one, though. This baby's mine.
Call 888-376-9692. You can also go online to WNYC.org. I admit, I was ignorant. I first heard Stanley Cup. I'm like, wait a second, like the hockey thing? But no, Stanley Cup, the iconic, very trendy, very cool piece of accoutrement for your kitchen. You can get it from WNYC, and it's a branded WNYC Stanley Cup. Like, no joke, it has Stanley on the side of it. It also says WNYC 100 years celebrating the centennial. This can be yours if you call and contribute, become a sustaining member at WNYC. Now, here's the really important part. If you call 8 p.m. or later, which is like an hour and 50 minutes from now, and you call and contribute to get that Stanley Cup, $30 a month contribution. You can still get it. We're not going to run out. We'll have it for you if you want it, but at a $30 a month contribution level if you call before that time. So in the next hour and 15 minutes, we will gift you that Stanley Cup for $15 a month. That's a deal if I've ever heard it, and we love deals here at WNYC and in New York City. Call, contribute now. Get that Stanley Cup by calling 888-376-9692. You can also go online, contribute to WNYC.org. Really, though, again, this is all an incentive for you to run to the phone right now because we are in the midst of our All the Money Half the Time pledge drive here at WNYC, so we are relying on you.
Lightning round, how much to get the Stanley Cup?
$15 a month right now. $15 a month.
What don't we have? Paywall.
Paywall.
Thank you. Paywall. Sorry, I should have given you more clues.
Time. I don't
have another question. My only other question is, listeners, what does WNYC mean to you? Donate an amount that makes sense for you and your lifestyle. 888-376-9692 or go online at WNYC.org. Donate to make Sean Carlson.
I'm destabilized.
Yeah, he needs a minute to recover. You count on us. We count on you. We depend on your financial support, and you depend on us to bring you reliable news, public affairs, and occasionally a laugh. Donate online at WNYC.org, and thank you.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kristen Schwab. The federal minimum wage in the United States is $7.25 an hour, with two exceptions. The first is for workers in D.C. or any of the 30 states that have set a higher minimum.
WNYC is supported by Betterment, the automated investing platform that helps make it easy to be invested. Learn more at Betterment.com. Investing involves risk.
It's $2.13. But there's been a lot of buzz lately about changing that. Voters in Arizona and Massachusetts will be deciding on ballot initiatives that could either enshrine or eliminate the tipped minimum wage. Marketplace's Kimberly Adams reports.
Federal law and the law in many states allows certain workers to be paid below the minimum wage because they earn tips.
Employers are legally required to ensure that tipped workers' tips cover the gap between the tip minimum wage and the regular minimum wage. But in practice, this is highly difficult to enforce.
Sebastian Martinez-Hickey is a state economic analyst at the Economic Policy Institute. He says tipped workers are disproportionately likely to be women and people of color.
Tipped workers are very low-paid workers. They earn about a third less than the median worker in the U.S. economy, and they experience poverty at much greater rates than the typical worker.
In a handful of states, plus Chicago and the District of Columbia, voters have decided in recent years to phase out the tipped minimum wage. The restaurant industry has vigorously opposed those moves and has been fighting further efforts to get rid of it. Mike Whatley is Vice President of State Affairs and Grassroots Advocacy at the National Restaurant Association, which has pushed back against efforts to eliminate the differential in 13 states and 3 localities.
And so in all 13 of those states, that legislation and those 3 localities failed to move forward.
The group argues that eliminating the tipped wage raises prices for patrons and increases labor costs for restaurant owners so that they have to cut hours and jobs. Whatley points to jobs data revealing changes in Washington, D.C.'s restaurant industry since it began rolling back the tipped minimum wage in 2023.
Since that initiative began phasing in last May, over 1,800 full-service restaurant employees have lost their jobs in D.C., while at the same time, quick service restaurants have actually added 300 jobs.
But neither the National Restaurant Association nor a local D.C. restaurant group could find a restaurant to publicly acknowledge that they had to cut jobs because of the change. Supporters of eliminating the tipped wage in D.C. argue it's not clear job losses are because of the wage increase or other industry trends. Meanwhile, this year, there's a ballot initiative to phase out the tipped wage in Massachusetts.
The proposal that's on the ballot is to raise that base wage rate from $6.75 up to the full Massachusetts minimum wage of $15 an hour. And it's proposing to do that over 5 years.
Jeanette Wicks-Lim is a research professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and she and a colleague crunched the numbers on what the impact would be in the state.
The cost increase to bars and restaurants would be something on the order of about 1% of their sales revenue. So pretty modest cost increase.
In Arizona, on the other hand, a proposal on November's ballot would do the opposite and preserve the tipped minimum wage. Advocates trying to get rid of the differential are worried if a move like this passes, it could be replicated in other states to quash efforts to boost wages for tipped workers. So a group called Raise the Wage Arizona and others are spending millions of dollars to try to defeat it. In Washington, I'm Kimberly Adams for Marketplace.
A lot of news about the housing market over the past few years has been kinda blah. With recently falling but still relatively high mortgage rates and low housing supply, it's been hard out there for buyers. So let's take a minute to relish in some housing delight. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau's survey of construction, around 18% of homes built last year were custom designed. And custom houses, they often come with a vision. Sometimes a vision fit for a storybook. Here's the latest installment in our series, Adventures in Housing History.
My name is Annalie Waterman. I'm a residential and interior designer in Dallas, Texas. In storybook-style houses, you're going to see quite a bit of variation. But if you're walking down the street and wondering if you're seeing a storybook house, you would look for characteristics such as maybe a swooping roof, exposed timber stained glass, wrought iron. They're typically small cottage style houses. They're not going to be big mansions. And they're going to have a nod to some sort of historical style. The earliest storybook style cottage that is considered kind of the start of the movement is Marie Antoinette's Petit Trianon on Versailles. It is lovely. It's a little exposed timber frame, French style cottage. And then it's got the big water wheel on the side, and it's got a huge garden in the front. And so those were popular in the 16th, 17th, 18th century. And then in the early 20th century, soldiers coming home from World War II, they'd been in Europe, they'd seen the colloquial architecture, they'd seen thatched cottages and the castles and the cathedrals and all these things. And then simultaneously, it was the explosion of the film industry. And of course, Disney was a big part of that. So that's where the storybook style really started coming together in America. Harry Oliver, who is a prominent art director at the time, he built what's considered the first storybook-style house in the United States. It's called the Spinetta House. It looks like a little witch's cottage. You wouldn't believe it's just right in the middle of LA. You can just walk right by it. And then it just really took off from there. There's all sorts of neighborhoods sprung up. Probably one of the most famous neighborhoods is Carmel by the Sea. It's just a whole neighborhood of little cottages. But there's little neighborhoods like that scattered all over America. It would be definitely a bucket list of mine to get to visit all of them in my lifetime. It would be so fun. I would love it to have a big, full-blown revival, but it's not the least expensive way to build. A lot of it is very unique, and it's not materials that you can buy at Home Depot or things like that. But I think there's always going to be people that love it and that keep it alive. People just always have a longing for the past and nostalgia and whimsy, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
That's Annalee Waterman, a residential designer in Dallas, Texas. Whether you're looking for your starter cottage or a forever gingerbread house, tell us about it at marketplace.com/adventuresinhousing.
Marketplace is supported by Schwab. Schwab offers investors choices like full-service wealth management, self-directed investing options, and trading on Thinkorswim. More at schwab.com. And by Odoo, designed to save time on business management with one simple user-friendly software. ODOO.com. Everything any business will ever need. And by Solidigm. Companies require a new approach to AI storage. Solidigm offers solid-state storage solutions optimized for AI from core to edge. StorageForAI.com.
This final note on the way out today, saw this in the Wall Street Journal. This year, restaurant chains and operators are on track to declare the most bankruptcies in decades, aside from 2020, when the pandemic turned eating out upside down. There are a bunch of reasons.
Hey, WNYC listener, you're listening during WNYC's All the Money in Half the Time fundraiser. Help keep fundraising short so we can get you back to the election coverage you're counting on. Give now at WNYC.org/donate. Thanks.
Our daily production team includes Andy Corbin, Alize Hassan, Maria Hollenhorst, Sarah Leeson, Sean McHenry, and Sophia Terenzio. I'm Kristen Schwab. We'll see you tomorrow. This is APM.